What's up, fam? It's Brian Castrillo. Just watch episode 3 of The Last of Us, titled A Long, Long Time. Let's talk about it. I want to know, what did you guys think of this episode? Now, as my thoughts, and I'm going to get into this, but I loved it, but I also was not a fan of it, and I'm going to tell you why. So we start the episode where we got Joel Miller and we got Ellie, and they're about 10 miles west of Boston, and they're in the woods. You see Joel, he's kind of building a rock cairn, which is a Gaelic term, which I believe that was coined by the Scottish, but it's basically a tower of rocks that was used for navigation, but this was used all over the world. I mean, the Native Americans used it, but you see them kind of arguing. They're having sort of a fallout, and they're going a little back and forth. But Ellie kind of breaks the ice and says, Tess was not my fault, um, and and you can't continue to blame me for this. And you can see she's kind of getting on his nerves. He's not ready to basically let go, but it's this is really cool because me being from Massachusetts, when they came upon a Cumberland Farms, because that brought back a flood of memories. But they go into this old abandoned Cumberland Farms, and as we're watching this, if you're not getting comparisons with The Walking Dead, then either you haven't watched The Walking Dead, or I don't know. But I am definitely getting one of the comparisons that I like when I like to compare them is, now in the beginning of The Walking Dead, they basically used film, and one thing that's cool about The Last of Us, they're not doing that now. While I loved how the look of The Walking Dead was in the beginning, this is a lot more bright, clear, and it's in high definition. It's definitely a completely different look. But when they're in Cumberland Farms, did Ellie not give you Carl Grimes, um, kind of feelings? Because when he's basically telling her not to do, and basically when Carl was told not to do anything, what did he do? There's a moment where they're looking through this Cumberland Farm. She jumps down into this hole, basically into the basement. She finds a guy who's basically looks like on the verge of becoming a clicker. And what's neat about these zombies compared to The Walking Dead is, in The Walking Dead, they're basically dead. They're brain dead for the most part. But this one, you could tell these, like, the soul of the person who is a zombie is still alert. They're still alive inside, but they can't control what's going on. But this totally brought back memories of when Carl was throwing that rock at the walker who eventually killed Dale. That's just kind of what I thought during that moment. But what did you guys think? Now, then you see them walking along, and they're having a conversation, basically kind of confirming what happened for the fall of humanity. Now, unlike where I think The Walking Dead kind of spread a lot quicker, but this was also in the matter of a few days. Now, this is a fungus, but it did take a few days to happen. I think The Walking Dead probably was a little bit quicker, but we learned well, not really. We already learned this, but confirmed that it was the food supply, flour, bread, cereal, stuff like that, that was basically destroying an entire civilization. And that's making me wonder, like, what would we as a society do if something was happening? Most people do not know how to grow their own food, just basic little vegetables. And I am by no means a prepper. I am not on that level, but I could grow some basic vegetables. But just thinking about that, society would basically be screwed if something happened. And there's a moment where Joel's walking up on to this area, and he's like, "Let's walk around," because he was basically trying to protect Ellie from what he was about to show her, which was a graveyard. And this is Joel. He's kind of gradually becoming a father figure to her, and he's trying to protect her because there's a grave of dead bodies. And we learned during the fall of civilization that the government basically was slaughtering people to prevent the spread. These people were not infected, but they killed them anyways because they felt that would, you know, lessen the spread, which honestly, if you look through history, we're not really making that much of a jump that this kind of stuff could happen, um, which which is why, and I think The Walking Dead showed this really well too, that it's best to kind of, if you can get away from society right away, just kind of go into the country, find shelter right away, and just kind of wait out the craziness in the beginning. But yeah, we see all these dead people there, and well, they're basically just bones, but and they kind of do a flashback of when the government was just rounding up people and they take them away, which presumably to be slaughtered. Um, but now the rest of the story is basically taking place during the 20-year time jump of what we already know happened in the previous two episodes. And we see Nick Offerman, which he was perfect in this role. The fact that he has not been in like The Walking Dead or some of these shows and movies before is beyond me. He's perfect for this. Um, but he's basically live, and this man is an incredible genius. Like, as far as the amount of knowledge that this man knows, as far as keeping a gas line open, he basically had an entire town um, surrounded by a electric fence um, that has security. It has a password to get in and out. He sets up all these traps. The man is a clearly has chef skills. He knows how to fight. And as you watch him, the amount of knowledge that this guy knows, and to be able to do this by himself and to stay afloat in this type of world is absolutely impressive. Um, and I love this character. He ends up meeting this other character named Frank, who they eventually fall in love. And the first thing that we see is, Frank falls into the hole. Now Frank is played by um, forget oh now I'm forgetting his name, but um, well, anyways, he's stuck in a hole, and Nick Offerman's character Bill, he says to him, well, no, I'm sorry, Frank was saying how he was hungry, and Bill was not having that. He's like, if I feed you, then every bum that you talk to from here on out is going to think that they can get a free lunch. And this is an Arby's, which I was cracking up at that. That is totally Nick Offerman. Totally fit his persona, which was fantastic. Um, but they do this whole thing, and both actors were perfect in this. They played a fantastic role, and one of the things that kind of stood out to me is, as Frank's character, as they start to get to know each other, he wants to basically make the town and like clean it up. He wants to clean up some of the stores that he likes, and just kind of make it his own, which I knew right from the get-go that was going to be a mistake, because if you see a thriving town, you're going to attract people versus like a dead kind of desolate town. And sure enough, that eventually does happen, where and Bill ends up getting shot, but they were a really good couple. But to an extent, Frank is a little controlling, and I'm not sure what. Now, he was trying to get to Boston, so I don't know why he wanted to go to Boston. They didn't really get into that, but I felt his character was a little bit controlling. There's one, um, as you're basically going through the life, and towards the end, this was after Bill. Those people come in, and which I swear to God, Bill had that set up like Home Alone, only a lot a lot more deadlier. Um, but he at Frank ends up or Bill ends up getting shot, but they take care of each other. They fall in love. Really good love story for the most part. But towards the end, we see Frank's character, and he's in a wheelchair, and he's dying. But he apparently had something wrong with him prior to this, which there was no cure for. Um, and he tells Bill that he basically wants to die. Crush these up, put him in in wine, and I'll he basically wanted to off himself, and Bill ends up basically he didn't want to, but he does that, but he also decides to do the same to him, which pisses off Fred. And one of the things that Frank said that kind of like rubbed me the wrong way, which is why like well played character, but I kind of when he said, "I want you to love me the way I want to be loved, not the way you want." It it's just little things, but they were overall great for each other. Um, now, uh, now they eventually, they die, and Joel and Ellie end up finding the place, and this guy, like I said, he was a serious prepper, had tons of guns. He had surveillance cameras everywhere just set up. He had all kinds of stuff. He had the truck that Joel eventually is going to need. Um, and I thought if one of them, I was hoping that, Bill, Nick Offerman's character would stay alive because amount of knowledge this man has to keep a town running by himself. When you see some of the stuff he does, is I was hoping that he would, he'd still be around, but no, he's gone too, and this is why I didn't really, I felt like to some extent this episode was kind of a filler episode, and it did not really move the needle as far as the story goes. Whether this is, again, remember, I didn't play the game, so I don't know this from the game standpoint, but with the exception of there was a note that was left, and Bill saying, take all my weapons and everything and just make sure you protect Tess. Now, of course, he doesn't know about Tess because this had already happened. But I think in that moment when Joel's reading that letter and he sees that, I think it was at that moment that he realized that he has he is now wanting to um keep Ellie safe. He wants to protect her, whereas before she was just cargo. I think he sees her a little bit differently now, and he goes over this whole speech with her, basically saying that you're gonna listen to me. You don't bring up Tess. You don't show him your arm. Um, Basically, kind of going into a dictatorship. If you remember the speech right before the prison, it not quite as drastic as Rick's, but kind of on the same level. But and then they kind of take off and go about their ways. But while the episode was really good, like if it was it's basically a self-contained episode. I thought that both of them were fantastic. It was a good story, but I don't feel like it moved the needle of the story. Because the whole episode was basically during the time frame that of the time jump when Joel had initially lost his daughter, and I enjoyed the episode, but as far as a whole, it just felt like a filler episode and didn't really. The only thing it did is it got them supplies at the end, and they're going on to the next ones. But I really did enjoy it. Fantastic acting, and I'm looking forward to episode 4. But what did you guys think? Did you enjoy this episode? Um, what questions do you have kind of going forward? But yeah, a lot of comparisons that I saw to The Walking Dead, and I'm gonna continue comparing it to it because you got post apocalyptic now scenarios. There is some moments that made me think of Carl. There's some moments that make me think of Rick, um, and just in general, like when Joel's saying like you got to watch out for people. Um, it it just definitely brings back some memories of The Walking Dead. But overall, great episode. But as on a whole, I don't feel like it moves the needle that much as far as the story goes. But either way, looking forward to episode 4. What did you guys think? I loved it. And I can't wait for the next one.